Hi, folks. This is Abel James, and welcome to the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. Today's very special guest is JJ Virgin, and she's the best-selling author of The Virgin Diet. And we're going to be talking about foods that cause you metabolic damage, fat storage, muscle loss, and all sorts of other problems, and they might not be the foods that you expect. So stay tuned. Before we get to that, though, I wanted to catch you up on a few very exciting things that we have going on. In the past few months, we've really been building a lot of momentum behind like natural health as well as the more science-backed biohacking type stuff. So just in the past couple of months, I've been interviewed completely unsolicited just from listening to this podcast or following the blog from people from Men's Health, Popular Science, Wired Magazine, and I'm going to be doing a series of talks for Creative Live coming up here in August. Also have a lot of other talks and events coming up. So please stay tuned to my newsletter. The best way to find that is go to fatburningman.com, put in your best email address, and you also get a free ebook that I'll send your way after you sign up. So it's just fatburningman.com and enter your best email. So let's just go right on to the show with JJ. It's a really fun one. I had the pleasure of meeting her at the Consumer Health Summit a few months back, and we hit it off over lunch talking about food. We could have talked all day. So in this particular show, we talk about why extended cardio sessions can actually make you flabby and what you should do instead, the 7 foods you should consider cutting from your diet, the secret to looking like 30 for the rest of your life, and tons more. All right, let's go hang out with JJ. All right, folks, JJ Virgin is a New York Times bestselling author of The Virgin Diet, a fitness and nutrition expert, speaker, and has helped thousands of people lose weight by addressing food allergies, food sensitivities, and other food intolerances. How's it going, JJ?
Awesome. And you?
That's what I like to hear. It's awesome here as well. Way too hot in Austin right now, but life is good.
Honey, I'm in Palm Springs, so
yeah.
just
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah. I wanted to start with kind of an unconventional question, if I may. We met a few weeks back at the Consumer Health Summit, which was awesome. We had a great conversation over lunch. But one of the things that struck me is when you talked about knowing Mark Sisson, who I just hung out with actually last weekend, which was a great time. And you said you've known him for something like 25 years. Yeah. Doing that math, you look like you're 30. How is that possible?
It is, it is really funny. We were sitting out at coffee the other day and we're like, oh my gosh, what happened here? Like he's 60 and I'm 50 and it's just, but you still kind of feel like you're, back in, not that I wish mentally I could be where I am right now and kind of still have some of the physicality, although I'm in better shape now than I was in my 20s.
Really?
Yes, I am. Yeah, because I've learned so much science. And when it all comes down to it, there's a couple things with that are very cool. And so anyone who's aging, which is everybody, should be very excited about this because time actually is the great equalizer. And so for those of us who take great care of ourselves, time is our friend, not our enemy. Because you look around you and go, oh my gosh, like I always kind of I think a lot of women play that, is she fatter than me game? I don't play that game. I play that is she older or younger than me game. And I'm always looking at someone going, that person's actually older than me, but just the way they carry themselves, the way they dress, probably they eat tons of sugar and don't get enough sleep, and they look way older. So it's really exciting. I think we are in the most exciting time now in science with what we're learning about aging, that so much of this is just a decision, and there's such a big payoff when you take great care of yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because it seems like people can get away with murder in their teens and even in their 20s to some degree, and they have great genetics or whatever. But after that, you start to see the people who might have looked great in high school or college. All of a sudden they're pudgy because they've been working on Wall Street for 10 years or something.
It's fair then, because I still remember being in high school and just battling acne, battling all these things. And this one gal was this skinny, perfect skin, and she smoked and just lived on sugar. And I go, this is so unfair. I'm like doing everything right, and this gal, it's just, see, you're doing this stuff and looks way better than me. So it is. Time makes things fair.
So what are some of your secrets to that in terms of not just living long, but living well?
Which is what it's really the point, right? I mean, I'd rather go out tomorrow having lived really well than like last another 20 years living a sucky existence.
Exactly.
Right? And I think that's what we start to think more and more about. Like, I want to be, paddle boarding when I'm 90,
Yeah.
So I think the number one, if I had to pick one thing that is the most important thing that you can possibly do for your health, it's your sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep is the biggest. And that's one where people get so annoyed with me. I like some kind of meanie, like I picked that one, So believe me, if it was up to me, the best things you could do for your health would be to stay up late, drink a lot of wine, have coffee, and live on dark chocolate. But that's not up to me, So, but sleep, I'd say, probably is the one. And I was fortunate early on. I was working with this gal who's an endocrinologist, and we were doing a project, Diana Schwartzbein, and I'd go stay at her house. And she would sleep her butt off. And I'd be like, get up, let's go, because I was used to being the short sleeper to get so many things done.
Sure.
And finally, she just hit me over the head with sleep. And I became a big sleeper. And I think sleep is one of the biggest things. It would probably go in order of sleep, attitude, because, you really get what you expect.
Yeah.
You so do. So we just have to continue to raise our expectations, not just our expectations, but also the floor, the minimal you'll accept, right?
Yeah.
If you expect to have great health and great relationships and great fun, you will. If you expect things are going to be crappy, they'll be crappy. So that's all the way down to your languaging. I had this guy I dated for a while, and he battled his weight, and I started to listen to him. And then I started to hear his little boy do the same thing. And they would say, I'm starving out of my mind. Like, no wonder you're hungry.
Yeah.
Like, hear what you're saying.
Right.
Starving out of my mind wouldn't even be in my vernacular.
That's true.
Right? Yeah. So, you got to watch that wording. I'll call up one of my other friends and I go, how are you doing today? He goes, oh, okay. Not so bad. I go, not so bad. Like, not so bad. How about like, I'm doing great. It's a big difference between not so bad and I'm doing great. You're probably in the same, it's probably no different in where you're at, but think of the difference that tells your physiology. So sleep, attitude, and then what you put on your fork, man.
Totally.
Right?
That's a really good point, though, about setting expectations, not just for yourself, but for someone else. It's like, even if you use that same example of what you put on your fork with someone who's starving out of their mind, if they're starving out of their mind, they're going to eat a huge dinner. They're going to be expected to, and like everyone else will be probably encouraging them to do so because they were starving beforehand.
Right.
But if they're just like, you know what, I've had a great day. I had a big lunch and I'm feeling satisfied. And then you go to dinner, like similarly, people will kind of raise their eyebrows if you have a huge dinner, right? It's more likely that you've set your expectations. You're just kind of going to go and eat until you're satisfied and have a good time. But that's a really good point. Even if you say, like, if we started this interview and you asked me how my day was going, I'm just like, ugh, it's been crap. Then you're going to treat me differently than if I'm just like, life is grand, everything's awesome.
No, I'm just going to get off the interview fast.
Yeah, exactly.
But don't you? I was early on, I had this amazing business mentor, and she made me wear this little rubber band around it. Anytime I said anything negative or judgmental or critical, she made me snap myself.
Yeah. I've heard of that.
It's like I had blisters on my. Yeah, it's really effective because we're so surrounded by that stuff. Mm-hmm. And we're lucky. Like, let's say at the Consumer Health Summit, you were not hearing negative people, life sucks. You just don't, I try to keep myself away from those people, but the minute you walk out into the world, they're there, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. So I have to watch it because I think it's very natural for people to kind of go into that. Oh yeah. How to say, gosh, I'm so tired. And it's like, ugh,
it's exhausting.
Yes.
Yeah. Just listening to that. So I did have some time to spend with your book, which I loved because you talk about food intolerances. And that's something that's like totally not sexy. Most people like sleep, right? They don't talk about it. They want to say that, I know what I'm intolerant of or sensitive to or allergic to. I have that covered. Most people don't. So
and
can you talk a little bit?
They don't. Yeah. So, and by the way, you don't. Because if I see that one more time on my Facebook page, well, I know I'm fine with eggs. You're not.
Yeah.
You just don't want to give them up.
Right.
It's really interesting. I took some poetic license in food intolerance because when I look at this, there's outright food allergies. Like, you're on the plane, then they go, don't open the peanuts.
Yeah.
Someone will. So there's those outright food allergies. Those are rare.
Yeah.
Then there's food sensitivities that happen due to a phenomenon called leaky gut, where your gut wall, the tight junctions in your small intestine loosen up due to fructose, due to stress, due to gluten. I mean, there's so many things that actually can loosen these up. That's one of the reasons this is so common in testing. I was doing testing in doctors' offices, and 70% of the people that I tested had some type of food sensitivity, the majority of them to dairy and eggs.
Wow.
And then there's the genetic ones, which if you look at genetically, how many people are sensitive to lactose, it's crazy, especially when you look at a lot of the supplement companies put lactose in their vitamin D. It doesn't have to be in the label.
Yep.
And then, we say there's maybe 1 in 133 with celiac, although I think that's one of the most underdiagnosed diseases out there, but maybe 30 to 40% are genetically intolerant. And then there's hormonal issues, like you would have to, say, sugar.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, you will have it if you eat enough of it. It's just a matter of time, unless you're Michael Phelps, it's like, unless you're really, and by the way, and I tell people, and you're not. Yeah. Okay. So, let's get that out on the table. So when you really look at it, people have this idea that they know, but what they don't realize is that food intolerance shows up as all these things that we think are just normal for us. That headache in the afternoon. Oh, I get that a couple times a week. It's totally normal for me. The gas and bloating, the joint pain, the fatigue, all these things. You go to the drugstore and they're the things that we buy the most of. And you go to the doctor and he goes, you're just getting older.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just under stress. Right? And then all of a sudden, when you do pull these things, and people don't want to pull them because the foods that hurt you, you crave them. In fact, part of the process of becoming intolerant to the food is you start to crave the very foods that are hurting you. So when you start to look at pulling them out, you freak. Yeah. You're like, no, and then and you start to bargain, because people say to me, all right, so there's 7 foods. Okay, I'll pull out 6.
Yeah.
And I go, but it's not drop 6 foods, lose 6 pounds, just 6 days. It's 7 foods, because whatever food it is you're saying you don't want to pull out, that is your kryptonite. There's a reason for it. I'd rather you just pull that food out, not the other ones.
Yeah.
And what's so great is, first off, within a week, you see so much. It's amazing. But, I love testing. I'm a testing geek. However, there's no single test that looks at this broad brush of food intolerance. Yeah. You would have to do like all this crazy stuff, and it wouldn't be complete, because the very best test is your body's own chemistry lab. I like to say our body isn't this bank account, this whole stupid model for how you're supposed to lose weight by eating less and exercising more. That's just retarded, can I say? Your body's a chemistry lab. And what if it wasn't about calories, but it was about food being information, and those calories creating specific responses in your body that can either say, hey, wipe you out, crash and burn, store fat, get inflamed, create insulin and cortisol and leptin resistance, all this stuff. And if you pulled it out, even in a matter of days, you're like, I cannot believe how I feel. I cannot believe how I feel. And at that point, you're empowered. It's very different than a diet, because all of a sudden you're going, oh, I'm now connecting the dots between what I'm eating and how I'm feeling, because after 3 weeks of letting everything cool off and getting this stuff out of your system, and you start to re-challenge your body, when you eat something, has an overblown reaction to it, plus you're way more aware because you're watching for it, and you go, holy moly, I did not know when I ate gluten, my fingers felt like this. I didn't know that when I ate eggs, I'd double over with stomach cramps. Who knew, because before that, you just had this mild little thing that you accepted as normal. And, the biggest thing I see out there is people walk around every day accepting so little for themselves, expecting so little for themselves. Their idea of what's normal, they have no idea what feeling phenomenal feels like. They just don't. So, we're trained to believe that, it's normal to have to use Metamucil, Excedrin,
That's so true.
It's not. I remember one of my first nutrition mentors goes, it is not normal to get sick. If you even get a cold once a year, there's something going on. I go, wow, really? What a reframe,
Yeah, totally. Because most people, every flu season, they expect to get a shot or get sick or both.
Right. It's like, I love don't get me started on the flu shot, but, it's amazing. So what if you reframed being sick as a sign something was wrong with your body? Your immune system's not just enough. You should never get sick. What a different philosophy, right?
Yeah. Then that's information. that can be actionable. It's like, if
Yeah.
I get sick, I'm doing something wrong. What is that thing? How can I diagnose that? And how can I fix it?
You know, it's interesting. Every year I used to get sick usually it was March. And I mean, I would go down. It was always some point between February and March. And I kind of went, what the heck is it? Why is it every year, February, March? I am just not like I get a little sick.
Yeah.
I'm 3 weeks down, just pummeled. And I finally went, oh, well, I'm a weight loss expert. And January, I killed myself, right? And I wouldn't get enough sleep, and I'd run around like an insano, and it'd flow into February. And whenever that started to kind of come down a bit, I'd go and get sick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is stupid. Stop it. You know? And so I stopped doing that. I became completely aware of how hard I was working, what I was doing, and I stopped. Mm-hmm. And that was it. No more getting sick.
Wow. That's awesome. So what are some of the things personally that don't work well for you? Because often it's not just the foods that you expect. It's some very weird out in left field ones.
Well, you know, it was interesting. For me, eggs were always my go-to food, and I'm like such an egg fan. And it's funny because that's when people are always like, I don't agree with her on the eggs. I go, I didn't agree with me on the eggs. Yeah. You know, why don't you read the book before you disagree? Mm-hmm. Because if you look at eggs, you know, I was always like, this is a great food. It's paleo, it's healthy. But we've really managed to screw things up. Number one, because we vaccinate people and we use, you know, albumin in the vaccine.
Right.
Number two, it's not just that you are what you eat, it's you are what you ate. And oh my gosh, what they're doing to those chickens. So that means those eggies are not so good. Now, if you're eating pastured eggs, a whole different thing. And then number three, eggs are like such an easy thing that you kind of get into this rut of like eggs every day.
Yeah.
And I just read that. Someone just wrote a review. I've got to stop reading these because they make me insane. But someone was writing, you know, I agree with everything but the eggs. And, you know, because eggs are just my go-to food. I eat them every single day. I'm like, yes, exactly. That's the problem.
Right.
So, you know, the thing that got me to stop eggs at first was I took a food sensitivity test and I was a +5 to eggs. And I'm like, damn. You know? Yeah. And I pulled them out. Now I can eat them again, but I still remember the first time I retried eggs. I challenged eggs, and I didn't mean to challenge eggs. I was in Las Vegas, and I was at China Grill, and we were ordering sushi, and someone ordered some sushi with some little sauce, and I had a bite. I mean, if I had like, I don't know, a quarter of a teaspoon of this sauce, it would have been incredible. I had hardly any, and I felt like Sigourney Weaver in Alien. I mean, it was like, my stomach, it was like, you know, it was incredible.
Really?
And in pain for hours. And I had to speak the next morning. I kept thinking, I'm going to have to go to the hospital, right? You know?
Wow.
So that's why I tell people, I go, listen, after 3 weeks, people normally don't want to go back on the food. Yeah. That's the biggest challenge I have with the program, is not getting them to start. Once they make that decision that, hey, you can do anything for 3 weeks, come on.
Yeah.
And they do it. They're like, you know, I feel so good now. I just don't want to eat those things again. And I go, you know, you don't need to eat these things again. I am sorry. I know that the registered dietitians are kicking my butt out there, but you don't need gluten. There's nothing you're going to become deficient in if you don't eat gluten. Yeah. You know, I keep getting these Twitter posts. Yeah. If you don't tell people to stop eating gluten, they're going to be deficient. In what?
Yeah.
And that's what I go, in what? Just name it. Name what they're deficient in.
Right.
But, you know, or corn or soy. But, I want you to know how you feel when you eat these things, so that you don't go end up like I did in Las Vegas. So, you know, hey, if this sneaks in here and there, I'm cool. Or if it sneaks in, I'm devastated. You got to know. That's why I have people re-challenge it. I believe that we are better off without gluten. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of things would be fixed very quickly if we dumped gluten and dairy out of people's diets, and soy. Like if I had to pick and artificial sweeteners, I was like, if I had to pick the top ones, I'm going to keep going, you know, and I just don't even understand corn. Corn's like silly. Yeah. Why is there popcorn when we use corn to fatten up cows and pigs?
Right. Like, and it's supposed to be a slimming food, right?
Yeah. Skinny pop. Come on. It's just silly. It's insane. So come on, stop it. Besides, who eats 1 cup of popcorn?
Yeah.
Ever.
And so corn specifically, because it's in so many things, is that something that you actually recommend that people avoid, or just eat less of in order to lose weight or maintain a healthy weight?
So for first 3 weeks, I have people pull out corn, dairy, soy, gluten, eggs, peanuts, sugar, artificial sweeteners. And you might say that's 8, but I put sugar and artificial sweeteners together. Long term, artificial sweeteners just don't make any sense whatsoever. They don't work. So they're toxic. They cause calorie dysregulation. They're just problematic. Sweeteners, there's a couple I like. I tell people 5 grams of added sugar or less. Really watch the fruit. Fruit is not some free food. The food guide pyramid telling you to eat 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day is stupid because people have 5 bananas. I mean,
it's a lot of bananas.
That's just dumb. Well, and also they don't distinguish between a potato and a Brussels sprout. And I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a difference there,
Huge difference,
just a tad. But in terms of corn's high glycemic, it's pro-inflammatory, besides being in everything. And it's right there with soy being one of the most genetically modified foods out there. I just don't see why we would touch it.
Yeah.
So in terms of like, do we have to watch it 100%? I have people pull all those things out 100% for the first 3 weeks, with the exception of sugar, because you're eating food, and all food, unless you're going to go have whale blubber, is going to have some sugar in it. That's why my next book is on sugar, because, oh my gosh, the hysteria of the sugar issues.
Right.
Jeez, who knew? But after that point, I have people re-challenge eggs, dairy, gluten, soy. Those are what I call the most high fire, high food intolerant foods. As far as corn and peanuts go, just keep them out. If they sneak in here and there, you're at a Chinese restaurant, they use some peanut oil, or you went to a barbecue and they have some organic corn on the grill, it's not going to take you down.
Yeah.
But don't go thinking. I'm really trying to help you disrupt your eating and pay attention, because if you look at corn, it's mainly in processed foods.
Yeah.
And people go, well, there's nothing to eat. I go, yeah, there's no processed foods to eat.
Right.
Right? Okay. Yeah, you're right. There's no, stop it. Just put those down. Right. But long term, it's really knowing how gluten, dairy, eggs, and soy should fit in your diet. Most people, once they get through the gut healing process, they can go back to eating pastured eggs, which are an entirely different egg than the caca eggs out there at the grocery store. Right?
I'm going to steal that from you.
It's a scientific term. Yes.
So when you, I recently, a few months ago, got the LEAP MRT test, which is IgE, IgG, and a bunch of other allergy tests at the same time. And what came back was very interesting to me, because there were certain things that I was taking for my health, like olive oil, bee pollen, grapefruit a few times a week, that I'm highly reactive to, it turns out. So,
oops.
Oops. Yeah. Right. And it was interesting, because a lot of those at the top were the ones that I was taking, not just as a part of my diet, but actively taking for my health, that were, jacking me up. What sort of testing do you recommend at the beginning, and what should you look out for when you're first getting started with this whole concept of food intolerance?
Well, understand that anything that you're eating a lot of that you then show reactivity, if you show a lot of reactions, it's actually got more to do with your gut wall integrity than anything else. And you'll tend to react to the things you're eating the most often. So that's more, not so much those foods specifically, but what's going on with your gut.
Yeah.
And what have you done to get your gut to be leaking? How do we restore the integrity of your gut and your gut microbiome, which ultimately is the biggest indicator of your overall health? To me, the most exciting area of health now is your gut microbiota, the bugs and guck in your gut. And you should have more good guck than bad guck.
Right.
Because if you have too much bad guck, bad bugs, candida, you can actually extract more calories from the food you eat, store it as fat. It's amazing. I had a client that had that problem, Suzanne Summers' stepdaughter, and she could not lose weight. She could not lose weight until we killed off all those bugs. And then she dropped 40 pounds and has kept it off.
Wow.
So here's my goal. My goal is to help 1 million people. And to do that, I had to make this very mainstream, so that the person who doesn't have access to this type of testing doesn't think they can afford it, because to me, the whole money thing's a total mindset. But I wanted them to be able to get started right away. The reason that I chose these 7 foods was years of testing, years of assessment. These are the most common ones. Now, at the end of 3 weeks, if you still got stuff going on, maybe we need to look at toxicity. If people are hypersensitive, generally they've got toxicity issues. They're poor detoxifiers. They've got leaky gut issues. They've got small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, candida. They've got weird outlier sensitivities. But, I was looking at, how do I help the majority of people? And right away, for the cost of a book, right? Because it doesn't cost you any more to eat this way. In fact, it probably costs you less because you're not buying all this processed crap.
Right.
And that was really my goal. My goal was not to put a barrier to entry in here to say, okay, now you got to test, you know, because then they won't do it. They can't do it. And then it's really about getting the nose, the camel in the tent. When they start to connect the dots between, wow, what I eat impacts how I feel and what I weigh.
Yeah.
Then they'll go deeper with it. Then they'll realize that food is your most powerful medicine. And maybe I need to look further. Maybe I need to look at my fatty acid profile to see if I don't have enough omega-3s or I'm omega-3 dominant. Because I see just as many people with too many omega-3s is not enough.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to see if I've got any outlier food sensitivities. Maybe I need to look at my gut microbiota and see what my bacterial flora looks like. Is there too much of the good, too much of the bad? Because, you know, not too much of the good, but too much of the bad. So maybe I need to look at my digestive enzymes. Am I digesting my fat? So again, I didn't want to have to put that in there as a starting point.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I was actually, I talk generally at medical conferences, and I'm sort of like the sacrificial lamb. Because I go in there and I'm not an MD.
Right.
And to me, I always feel like that's my benefit. I can get away with more, right?
Sure.
And I like to just go up and tell stories and have fun and be funny because most of the things at these medical conferences, you could cry. They're so boring. Yeah. They read their PowerPoints, they read studies, and it's like, who cares? This isn't going to translate into your office.
Yeah. How
about if we figure out, let's throw some studies in so I can prove to you, but let's do something that will really work that you can do something with on Monday. So I'm going through this whole program and I'm showing case studies of how we've reversed fatty liver and dropped blood pressure, all this crazy stuff in really short periods of time. And this chick comes right, and you always know, because there's always one who's waiting, who decided before you even walked up there that they were going to get you, right? Especially being a female and not an MD. They're like, I'm getting her. She's mine. And so this woman comes running up to the mic and she goes, I'm an endocrinologist. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Boof, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, bring it on. And she started, well, what kind of testing you do before you start the program? Because you're telling people that they shouldn't be snacking all day long. And what if they're hypoglycemic? And what if they're, I go, well, you know, I had an hour to do this talk. Yeah. And in the book, I describe in detail what to do if you're hypoglycemic. I said, but the whole point of this is that most people will never come to your office.
Yeah.
They'll never come to see you. They'll never do the testing. Those are the people I want to reach. And maybe when they do this book, they'll then go, wow, I can be better. And they'll come and see you.
Yeah.
I go, but if I put that barrier to entry up, we never get started.
That's a really good
So
point.
Instead of that, what if I threw something so hooky out there that people go, oh my gosh, I could drop 7 pounds in just 7 days just by cutting out these 7 foods. I can do that. What if that, So you got them in the game because ultimately I want to help the world. I want to transform health and healthcare around the world. Now, if you said to people, hey, I want to help you get healthy, they're like, oh, okay, snore, right? Yeah. But you said,
I've
listen.
tried that. It doesn't work.
No, people don't buy health. I mean, whenever I announce it as a medical conference, you can hear pin drops and people are glaring at me and I go, it's true. You just named your center the Wellness Center or the Optimal Health Center, but people don't buy that. They buy getting younger, losing weight, and having better sex. Yeah. And if you could throw in more money in there too, they're all in. I go, but the rest of this stuff, they don't even know what optimal health is. They don't know. They don't know what it means or wellness. What's wellness? I don't know. They don't buy it. So stop it. Right?
So interesting. So if you do start your program, what does it look like in the first few weeks as your body is self-correcting?
So the first thing I have people do is I have them take a little assessment to find out how intolerant they are. And it's really looking at symptoms that, again, we always thought were normal, that all of a sudden you're going, oh, these could be symptoms of food intolerance. So the first thing we do is to get that benchmark because, you got to know your starting point. Yeah. And what you measure, you can improve. And what I find with people is that if you don't do that, at the end of 3 weeks, they feel so much better, but they don't remember that they felt crappy. So therefore they don't realize they're any better, which makes me crazy. I have them weigh every day for the first week and then once a week after that. The first couple days, and I set them up for this, I tell them, you're going to feel crappy. And that's awesome. Yeah. It's great. Because the worse you feel, the better the results will be. Because that just shows you your body really is craving these foods. That means they're hurting you. It's fabulous. So you got, I'm a mom, so I'm used to setting, kids bleeding. That's fine. You're good, safe.
Right.
So it's all about setting expectations. The other thing is, and this is so important, I tell people to pull these 7 foods out, or food groups. Gluten's not a food, it's a food group. But more importantly, I tell people which foods they can swap in instead. And so often I find people actually like the swaps better. We get so used to eating a certain thing that it just becomes what we do. We're all creatures of habit. So I think the biggest success here is to say, hey, it's not about pulling these 7 foods out. It's about putting these other things in their place.
Right.
And making it so simple and so black and white. To me, what's difficult in anything is a learning curve and having to figure stuff out. Like, how many points is this worth? Which category does this fall into? How much of this can I have? Oh, I can have a little bit of this. Well, if you tell someone who's eating something that's not working for them, they can have a little bit, the little bit creates a big problem.
Yeah.
Moderation doesn't work with food intolerance, and moderation creates a total slippery slope. If you tell someone, hey, you can have a little cookie every afternoon, they're going to have a really big little cookie every afternoon, right? And it's going to keep those cravings going. So what happens is the first couple days, generally people feel a little crappy. If they've been eating a load of sugar, they might start to feel their energy drop. That's why my next book is just on sugar, and the first week will be a kind of detox week.
Yep.
And then they'll start to feel those symptoms. They tend to get a little worse before they get better, because those foods they're craving, the antibodies are like, feed me, feed me. Yeah. At the end of the first week, though, generally the average person does lose about 7 pounds. I've had people lose 12. I've had people lose 2. But the average is about 7 because they're getting rid of inflammation quickly. And then they start to notice this huge shift in their skin, in their energy, in their joint pain. And what I like to say is that people come because they want to lose weight, but they stay because of how much better they feel. In my PBS show, we talk about weight, but they told me on PBS people don't buy weight loss, which turns out they were wrong. But they really buy feeling better. So we said drop 7 foods, feel better fast, joint pain, memory, skin, energy. And so by the end of the first week, people were like, I had no idea I could feel this way. It starts to become your new normal. At the end of 3 weeks, we have you redo a symptoms test. Now, the biggest challenge I have again with the program is at the end of 3 weeks, and you don't have to do this. Like in the new, we're writing the cookbook right now, and they said, listen, you can stay on the first cycle till you're pretty much where you want to be, because some neurological things may take a lot longer to heal. I go, but at some point I want you to re-challenge just so you connect the dots, just so you know how vigilant you need to be. Like, can gluten sneak in here and there, or when it happens, do I just go down? Right. You need to know this. It's not so that it becomes a mainstay of your diet. I wanted to break that cycle. But if I told you drop 7 foods forever, no one would ever buy that book. Right. Never. Are you kidding? Give up gluten and dairy forever. I say, it's just, come on, you can let your cheese go for 3 weeks. Yeah. You can do that, right? And then 3 more weeks, and 3 more weeks, and 3 years, and 30 years.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. And then all of a sudden, you're the type of person who doesn't eat donuts anymore.
Right.
You don't have to, and you don't want them. Like, when I see stuff like that, it doesn't
no
have that Pavlov's dog effect of making me salivate and then pumping out a little bit of insulin to make me hungry. Like, it just doesn't happen. I'm like, that's not food. I'm going to go eat a delicious whatever later, that I have waiting for me at home. So yeah, it's an interesting psychological effect over time as that becomes part of your habit, part of your identity. And then it's easy because you're not giving anything up anymore. Well,
and the identity is so critical. What I love about this is that people become ambassadors for it, because they start to change so quickly that people want to know what they're doing. It's the Harry and Sally, I'll have what she's having. Yeah. And so all of a sudden now people are watching them, and this is their identity, so they're not going to go off of it. And, it's that whole phenomenon. People tell me, what is the number one thing that you would recommend for someone to stay healthy and fit for the long haul? And I say the number one thing is to have healthy, fit friends.
Yeah.
That's your number one thing. Find friends not only who are healthy and fit, but find them that are healthier and fitter than you. Yeah. Because they're not staying out till 3 a.m. doing tequila shots and eating chili fries. Pretty sure, right?
Occasionally.
Occasionally, and then they're down for a week.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's so true. Actually, my it it was my girlfriend Allison. She just had a birthday this past weekend, and someone got tacos at like 2 a.m. or something like that. And she's like, "Oh, I'll just have a few, or excuse me, nachos." And she had a few nachos, and she was out. She actually didn't drink that much on her birthday, but she did have those nachos at the end of the night, and she was just feeling awful. She could not believe how awful she felt. She's just like, "Oh, BT corn,"
Yeah.
just destroyed her for the next day, and it's shocking how powerfully terrible these foods can be, even in such small doses when your body no longer needs or craves or is used to them.
Yeah, I think the scariest thing going now is the whole genetic modification. And that's really the reason we have food intolerance is one of the biggest, one of the things my program does, but again, I wanted to make this very consumer friendly, not heavy, not scary, is it pulls GMOs out.
Yeah.
And boy, GMOs are frightening. They're not food. It's like, so
I totally agree with that. I had Jeffrey Smith on the show not too long ago, and it's so interesting because he gets such blowback from so many people who are actually I was just talking to my dad yesterday about this. They're trying to pass a few bills everywhere, really, in America. Someone's trying to pass these bills where you have the right to know if there are GMOs in your food or not.
Yeah, isn't that bizarre that this could ever even be a question?
Right. And one of the main arguments, this is someone who's, I'm not going to say the person's name, but this is a candidate or a political person who he's supported for quite some time now, many, many years, decades. I grew up hearing her name. And she is vocally against labeling because she thinks it will confuse the consumer. And that's one of their main arguments, is that it'll confuse people if we tell them that GMOs are in their food. And it's like, how can anyone ever accept that? That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, wow.
I was shocked.
It's insulting, actually. It's insulting. It's like the stupid little consumers who just are too stupid to understand what that means.
Right.
What we did out in California was, because you would have thought if anywhere this would pass, it'd be Colorado or California. Those would be like two places you'd expect. Well, what they did in California was they created this huge thing with the food industry, where the food industry said, if we have to label everything, it'll get so expensive, you won't be able to afford it. I'm like, what? We won't be able to afford the tortilla chips? Oh, darn.
Yeah, tortilla chips and popcorn. They have some pretty healthy margins going on. And I'm pretty sure putting a stamp on a label isn't going to crush those.
Yeah. Gosh.
Oh, gosh. So one other thing I'd really love for you to cover is your approach to training. Especially, I have a lot of women who listen to the show who are not necessarily fans of burst type training.
Why not?
Can you talk about that? Can you rant about that for a little bit?
Can I rant on that? I never rant. It's funny because I have been in this. I actually got into this whole area when I was a kid. I mean, I started teaching calisthenics in high school. I was on the track team. I worked out with weights with the football team.
Cool.
I grew up in Berkeley. I've always been into nutrition and health. And I've done everything I've been on every diet known to man, vegan, macrobiotic, I call it macropsychotic, vegetarian, you name it, I've done it. And I was a massive endurance trainer. And it's funny, when I was a vegan endurance athlete, I was 10% body fat higher in my 20s.
Wow.
Yeah, with cystic acne.
Really?
And very crabby, I might add.
Yeah.
Not a happy girl.
Okay.
So, it's funny at 50 to have 10% less body fat, work out a quarter of what I used to work out, have so much more muscle mass, and feel so much better. Our bodies, endurance training, I can't think of a worse thing for a woman to do than endurance training. And it's funny because when you look at why are women doing it, most of them are doing it to lose weight, but actually it makes you better at storing fat. It burns up your muscle, which we don't have a lot of to hold on to in the first place. It destroys your adrenals, lowers your testosterone. I mean, if I could name, and makes you age faster and dumps your immune system. If I could name one thing to say, hey, you want to screw yourself up? Go train for marathons. In fact, when I was on Dr. Phil for 2 years, when he did his whole weight loss thing. And the people we had 2 people lose the challenge.
Yeah.
And they were the 2 gals. I told them not to do it.
Yep.
And one was actually, they were both vegetarians too. Vegetarians, and they did the LA Marathon. I go, don't do that. That is going to get in the way of you losing weight.
Yeah.
You've got to do burst style training. If you look at everything is information, food's information, exercise is information. Everything ultimately is about your hormone response. So we're eating to maximize hormone response. We're exercising to improve growth hormone, testosterone, to have minimal impact on our stress hormones. In fact, what we want to teach our stress hormones is how to handle stress and recover faster. We don't want to impact our immune system. We want our immune system to get stronger, and we certainly don't want to age faster. And so when you look at burst style training, the great thing is the number one reason people don't exercise is they say they don't have time. And if you don't have time for burst training, then you need to make time, because there's just brief amounts of time. But it's all out and recover, and all out and recover, and all out recover. What it does is it teaches your body how to handle stress better. The big pushes raise lactic acid, keep that lactic acid continuing to climb up, so it triggers a response of growth hormone. So you're helping raise growth hormone and testosterone. And also, it's very clear that the fuel substrate you use during exercise is the one you store after. Mm-hmm. So if you're using more sugar during exercise, you restore sugar into your muscles for more energy after. But if you use more fat during exercise, become better at storing fat. So if you want to burn more fat, you need to burn more sugar during exercise. Then you'll burn more fat all day long. And the biggest thing that women need to do is create what I like to call your metabolic Spanx, i.e. put on muscle. It holds everything in tighter, right?
Yeah.
And boosts your metabolism and helps you become more insulin sensitive. The first place we restore insulin sensitivity, which if insulin's more sensitive, it's not going to come up as much. If your insulin's high because you're eating those stupid 100-calorie snack packs all day long and doing loads of endurance training that's breaking down muscle, dumping into your bloodstream, raising sugar and raising insulin, you've locked the doors to your fat cells. You cannot burn fat. You're going to become a TOFI. You're going to be a thin outside, fat inside person. And that's what you see with people who do a lot of endurance training. They're these squishy people. Mm-hmm. You want to look better naked ultimately, I think. Right?
Most people do. I think that's a fair statement. Sure.
I was so upset when someone else wrote that book. I'm like, that's my book to write. With the last name, Look Better Naked. But, ultimately, you don't want to pull off your Spanx and have everything flow out of there, right? Yeah. You want to not have to wear those Spanx. So that's what muscle's all about. You don't build muscle doing endurance training. Yeah. Besides, you're going to look like a haggard, old, squishy witch. All right. Was that a good rant?
I am in awe right now. These past 3 minutes of you ranting about this has been some of my favorite on the show in months, I swear. Like maybe best ever. That's terrific. If any woman comes to me and says, like, there's no way I'm going to try this, I'm going to point them to that 3-minute clip. Because it is so true. Everything you said is supported by science, and it's also like anecdotally makes sense with some pretty powerful imagery of taking off your Spanx and everything flowing out. That's not a wonderful image in anyone's mind. So yeah, it's very compelling stuff. So we're just about out of time, JJ, but why don't, before we go, you talk about what you're working on now and where folks can find you?
Ooh, I am finishing my cookbook right now for the Virgin Diet Cookbook. Yay. And then we start the Sugar Virgin.
All right.
So yes, all about sugar. I'm going to do a little launch of the pilot program for that this fall, which I'm excited about too. So awesome. If you're on my list, you'll find out about it and get to participate. So thevirgindiet.com, we actually have training videos, free training videos on the program, so you can, and the quiz, so you can get started immediately. And then I also have my free 4x4 workout. So I hate excuses. In fact, one year when I was a personal trainer, I made all my clients for Christmas this no excuses t-shirt, the big red circle with the thing and the excuses. So what I did was I divided the body into 4 parts: upper body pushing, upper body pulling, hips and thighs, and power core. And I created a 15-minute, I say it's 15 minutes, it's fast, it's fun, and you're done in 15 minutes or less. And it's all your resistance and burst training and some flexibility in 15 minutes, and it's free. Awesome. So go all the excuses out the window, and you can get those and do them at jjsfitclub.com. So those are two cool things that are freebies, because I always like to remove any barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Or we could call that an excuse.
Yeah. No excuses.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, JJ, thank you so much for coming on. This was an absolute blast. I would love to have you on again soon.
My pleasure. I knew we would have fun.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to do it again soon. Thanks again.
Yes. Thank you.